Yo, have you ever looked at a world map and thought Africa looks a little off? You're not alone. Many people have noticed this anomaly, and it's not just a figment of your imagination. The way Africa is represented on many maps is actually quite misleading. Turns out, Africa is a victim of some seriously bad cartography. The Mercator projection, one of the most commonly used map projections, distorts the size of landmasses as they get closer to the poles. This means that continents like Africa, which are closer to the equator, appear much smaller than they actually are. We're talking about a continent so massive it could easily fit the United States, China, India, and most of Europe inside it. That's right, Africa is not just big, it's colossal. The sheer scale of this continent is mind-boggling, yet it's often downplayed in our everyday maps. Yet on many maps, Africa looks like a shrinking violet next to Greenland. This is particularly absurd when you consider that Greenland is only about 2.2 million square kilometers, while Africa is a whopping 30.37 million square kilometers. The difference is staggering, yet the visual representation on many maps doesn't do it justice. Greenland, a landmass mostly covered in ice. It's almost laughable how this icy expanse is often depicted as being comparable in size to Africa. The reality couldn't be more different. Come on people, it's time to set the record straight. We need to start using map projections that accurately represent the true size of continents. The Gaulle-Peters projection, for example, shows landmasses in their correct proportions, giving us a much more accurate view of the world. Africa is a giant, and it's time we started treating it like one. This isn't just about getting the geography right, it's about acknowledging the true scale and importance of this incredible continent. This isn't just about geography, people, it's about perception. When we see Africa portrayed as smaller than it is, it affects how we view the continent and its people. It can lead to misconceptions and stereotypes that are far from the truth. When we see Africa portrayed as smaller than it is, it affects how we view the continent and its people. This misrepresentation can have real-world consequences, influencing everything from international relations to economic policies. It's crucial that we correct these inaccuracies to foster a more accurate and respectful understanding of Africa. It's time to ditch the outdated maps and embrace the true, magnificent size of Africa. By doing so, we can start to appreciate the continent for what it truly is, a vast, diverse, and incredibly important part of our world. Let's give Africa the recognition it deserves, both on our maps and in our minds. Let's be real, maps are just flat representations of a round object. When you look at a map, you're seeing a simplified version of our complex three-dimensional world. It's like trying to capture the essence of a sculpture in a photograph. Something always gets lost in translation. It's like trying to flatten an orange peel. You're going to have some distortions. Imagine peeling an orange and then trying to lay that peel flat on a table. No matter how hard you try, it won't lie perfectly flat without tearing or stretching. This is exactly what happens when cartographers try to represent the spherical Earth on a flat map. The most common type of world map is the Mercator projection, invented way back in the 1500s. Gerardus Mercator, a Flemish geographer and cartographer, created this projection to help sailors navigate the seas. It was revolutionary for its time, allowing sailors to plot straight-line courses over long distances. Great for sailors, not so great for accurate continent sizes. The Mercator projection distorts the size and shape of landmasses, especially as you move away from the equator. This means that countries closer to the poles appear much larger than they actually are. The Mercator projection stretches out the poles, making countries near the top and bottom look way bigger. For instance, Antarctica and Greenland appear enormous, while countries near the equator, like those in Africa and South America, seem much smaller in comparison. That's why Greenland looks like it could swallow Africa whole on some maps. This distortion has led to many misconceptions about the true size of countries and continents. People often underestimate the size of Africa, which is actually one of the largest continents on Earth. But trust me, if Greenland tried to eat Africa, it would choke. The sheer size difference is staggering. Greenland may look massive on a Mercator map, but in reality, it's much smaller than Africa. The truth is, Africa is 14 times larger than Greenland. This fact often surprises people who've only seen the distorted Mercator projection. To get a more accurate view of the world, it's important to look at different types of map projections, like the Gaulle-Peters projection, which shows land masses in their true proportions. So, next time you look at a map, remember, things aren't always what they seem. Let's play a little game called Africa, or... Ready? Africa or the USA, China, India, and most of Europe combined? Ding, ding, ding. If you guessed Africa, you're right. That's right, folks. Africa is massive. It's bigger than you think, bigger than you can probably imagine. Still not convinced? How about this? Africa is so big, it spans 6 different time zones. That means when it's lunchtime in Cairo, it's still breakfast time in Dakar. Now that's what I call a continental breakfast. So if Africa is so huge, why do we keep seeing it shrunk down like a sad balloon animal? It's a question that has puzzled many people who look at world maps and wonder why the second largest continent appears so small. Well, some folks say it's because of something called Eurocentrism. This term refers to the practice of viewing the world from a European perspective, often at the expense of other cultures and regions. That's a fancy way of saying that European explorers and map makers put themselves at the center of the world, literally. During the Age of Exploration, European cartographers created maps that placed Europe prominently in the middle, giving it undue importance. And guess what? Europe just happens to be located pretty far north on the globe, which means it gets a size boost from the Mercator projection. This projection, developed by Gerardus Mercator in 1569, distorts the size of land masses as they get closer to the poles. The Mercator projection was originally designed for navigation, making it easier for sailors to plot straight-line courses across the ocean. However, this convenience came at a cost: the distortion of land masses, especially those near the equator, like Africa. It's like they were trying to make themselves look bigger and more important, while Africa got pushed to the side, literally. This distortion has had lasting effects on how we perceive the size and importance of different regions. So next time you look at a world map, remember that what you're seeing isn't an accurate representation of the true size of continents. Africa is much larger than it appears, and its reduced size on maps is a result of historical biases and practical navigation needs. Understanding this can help us appreciate the true scale and significance of this vast and diverse continent. Section 5. Beyond the Mercator, a mapmaker's responsibility. The good news is there are other types of maps out there. Maps that don't make Africa look like it's about to fall off the edge of the world. The Gall-Peters projection, for example, shows the continents in their true proportions. It's time to ditch the outdated Mercator and embrace maps that reflect reality. Because when we see that world in its true proportions, it changes our perspective. It reminds us that Africa is not a small, insignificant continent. It's a land of immense size, diversity, and importance. Section 6, Africa's got it all, from deserts to rainforests. Now that we've cleared up the size issue, let's talk about what makes Africa so amazing. First of all, this continent is geographically blessed. We're talking towering mountains like Kilimanjaro, the roof of Africa. We're talking vast deserts like the Sahara, where you can find more sand than you can shake a stick at. And let's not forget the lush rainforests of the Congo Basin, teeming with life. From the snow-capped peaks to the steamy jungles, Africa's got it all. Section 7. Animals up close, Africa's wildlife extravaganza. Hold on to your hats, folks, because Africa is home to some of the most incredible wildlife on the planet. We're talking lions, elephants, giraffes, zebras, rhinos, hippos, cheetahs. The list goes on and on. It's like walking onto the set of a National Geographic documentary, but in real life. And don't even get me started on the birds, from the majestic African fish eagle to the tiny, colorful sunbirds. Africa's skies are alive with feathered friends. Section 8. Cultural tapestry, a continent of diversity. Africa isn't just about stunning landscapes and wildlife. It's about the people, the cultures, the music, the art. Africa is a continent of over 50 countries, each with its own unique history, traditions, and languages. From the bustling Medinas of Morocco to the vibrant townships of South Africa, Africa is a melting pot of cultures. It's a place where ancient traditions meet modern influences, creating a rich and vibrant tapestry. Section 9, the cradle of humanity, where it all began. Here's a fun fact. Africa is the cradle of humanity. That's right, folks. The very first humans walked these lands millions of years ago. Scientists have unearthed countless fossils and artifacts that prove Africa is where it all began. So, when you think about it, we're all just visitors on this continent, guests in the birthplace of our species. Kind of makes you want to call your ancestors and say thanks for choosing such a cool spot. Section 10. Africa, rising, a continent of potential. For too long, Africa has been defined by its challenges, poverty, conflict, disease, but it's time to change the narrative. Africa is a continent on the rise. From tech hubs in Nigeria to renewable energy projects in Kenya, Africa is brimming with innovation and entrepreneurship. Young people are driving change, demanding better governance and creating a brighter future for themselves and their communities. Africa is not a continent to be pitied, it's a continent to be reckoned with. Section 11. Africa's future, big, bold and beautiful. So there you have it. Africa, not small, not insignificant, not a place to be underestimated. Africa is a giant, a continent of immense size, diversity and potential. It's time we started seeing Africa for what it truly is, a land of wonder, opportunity and boundless beauty. Let's ditch the outdated maps, challenge the stereotypes and embrace the true, magnificent size of Africa. Because when Africa rises, the world rises with it.